Thank you for making it out to the presentation today. Today we will be featuring Napoleon Marietta from the Land Recognition Committee. And here on our main page, I have an image of a mountain, or Oibad Doag. I apologize for my pronunciation. That is the traditional name of the mountain that today we call a mountain and is celebrated by ASU students for, I think, over 100 years now. And I wanted to show everyone a land recognition statement from ASU that was made as a video. It features our speaker today, as well as quite a few other Native students.
Arizona State University is located in Indian Country. There are 22 tribal nations in Arizona. ASU's campuses are situated on the homelands of many indigenous peoples, including the Akimel, O'odham, and Peepash.
Arizona State University recognizes the original inhabitants of these lands
and recognizes that they still reside throughout the Phoenix metropolitan area.
And we recognize the impact of their wisdom and generosity towards us.
If you've flown into the valley, you have undoubtedly seen the Salt River Project canals that surround the area.
Those modern-day canals follow the framework of the canals originally constructed by ancestral Sonoran Desert people, Huhulcum, to make this area both livable and a place where peoples could thrive.
We acknowledge that the modern-day indigenous nations that descended from the ancestral peoples are the original inhabitants of this land.
So this video is ASU's official recognition of our original inhabitants of the land. And though it might not be the perfect statement, I believe it is quite a powerful one. Recently, there was a tour to AISSS from ACES during their national conference. And my supervisor, Vicki Baldwin, mentioned that after showing this land acknowledgement, the room was just floored. It's very powerful to have a statement like this, and very meaningful, especially for those of an Indigenous background, which is why I felt like we should highlight our Land Recognition Committee this evening. So this is the current statement that the Land Recognition Committee has been working on. You might notice that there are some differences between this and the statement that was in the video. And hopefully tonight we can discuss a little bit of the differences. So it reads, Arizona State University's campuses are situated on the homelands of many tribal nations, in particular the O'odham and the Peepash, and acknowledge the many indigenous communities who reside in this territory. again, I apologize for my pronunciation, is the O'odham word for that is now known as Phoenix, which was settled in 1881 by occupiers. The ancestors of the O'odham, the Hu'ugam, created canals and utilized surrounding rivers that are the basis of the current irrigation system that feeds Sikikig today. These waterways have been the foundation and livelihood of the residents within the valley. Throughout the past 500 years, the impact of colonialism has been detrimental to Indigenous lands and languages, affecting their livelihood. Many people who live in the Southwest are unaware of this history. Furthermore, ASU's Indigenous student community consists of over 3,000 strong, not including faculty, staff, and alumni who continue to thrive, educate, and advocate for the strengthening of Indigenous ways of life. As the O'odham call it, Himdag, the way of life for the O'odham, encompassing their culture, traditions, identity, and being. As O'odham and all Indigenous peoples, our identity is tied to the land. Like our own bodies, we must respect and care for it, and we urge everyone to do the same. We challenge you to educate yourself about the history and the communities who continue to thrive today. Moving forward, it is vital to honor and respect that you are always on Indigenous land. So at this point, I would like to just read one more quote from Northwestern University on the creation of Indigenous land recognition, and then we'll transition to questions for Napoleon, our guest speaker for tonight. It is important to understand the longstanding history that has brought you to reside on the land and to seek to understand your place within that history. Land acknowledgements do not exist in a past tense or historical context. Colonialism is a current ongoing process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. And like I said, that's a statement from Northwestern University. It can be found on the Native Governance site, nativegov.org, in their Guide to Indigenous Land Acknowledgement. And with that, I'd like to turn to Napoleon and ask, why is Indigenous land recognition important?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Well, before I get started, I want to also acknowledge that Ms. Vaughn is also here, and she has been a part of this conversation as well. So, Ms. Vaughn, if you want to also tag team in here, more than happy to get your comments too, because there's there's always been like discussions around this type of thing, and I think it's crucial to get like autumn perspectives, especially because like there is a male perspective and an indigenous woman perspective, autumn perspectives from across different areas. So I just want to acknowledge Ms. Vaughn. She could chime in as well if she feels comfortable. Just kind of giving some history. I'm a graduate student here at ASU. I'm in the AIS and public administration track here. I've been here since 2013. I come from the Gila River Indian community, which is not far from where we're at in Tempe. And so this kind of land recognition kind of started getting popular around different areas, especially in Canada, First Nations. So we kind of seen why it's important. I've never really heard of it until just recently. And once we started seeing a group of us students here, Indigenous students, were like, well, we should create one. And where do we begin? And so it only seemed appropriate when we started having meetings with our autumn group and our language professor who also kind of was telling us some of the history and why this is important. So it kind of started off of that with the original, like, there's always been somewhat of a land statement, but not from the original folks that have been here. They've come from like deans or different departments. I mean, Michael Crow has one, and you can kind of tell the difference. And I'm pretty sure later on we'll talk about that, how that difference is from ours, which Tyler read earlier. So the reason why that's important is because we all know, like, as indigenous people, that our recognition and our ways of kind of being on the land is when we sing, when we go out and celebrate, or when we go out and harvest. That's our recognition as indigenous people, as Autumn here in the desert. That's our recognition. So how do we put that into words? Can that even be something that we can do? Um, and so how the approach kind of came at is that we're kind of tired of people speaking for us and don't really know who the Autumn are. Under like 2 minutes, and you get this very small snippet of who we are and stuff. So it's important to just go beyond that and further, and giving more history and things that are connected to this land that we don't see every day from the actual inhabitants of our people. So a lot went into it. So words mean a lot, and yeah, that's why it's important. Is because it's crucial to understand the history of a place that you're walking on. Um, just because it's a guess you would call it metropolitan space doesn't mean that it's not important to the original people here. And we face a lot of challenges that don't often get recognized. And so this is a very small piece of why it's important, is because we're still here, we're still trying to fight for things. And so, but yeah, I don't know, Miss Vaughn, if you had anything you wanted to add.
Oh, you pretty much wrapped it up. I'm driving, so hopefully you can hear me.
We can hear you, and definitely anything you'd like to add tonight, we would love to hear. So moving on to our next question. How does the language we use influence a land recognition statement? Like, I've noticed some terms used in statements, like colonizers or occupiers, are more often found in statements created by Indigenous peoples themselves, and they're not quite as common in statements created by other entities.
Yeah, that's very true. Like the one that is mentioned before or later on, there's always you can kind of always tell which are approved um statements that go through many lines of approval, whether that's a dean's office or like the institution or tribal nation. So they go through different kinds of as I've learned, that they go through different they go on different eyes until it's like, oh yeah, we all agree that this is official. What's interesting though is that with our statement that we created, all of that has been researched from indigenous scholars. Settler colonialism, like all these terms that we use isn't nothing new. Like all these terms that we've incorporated in this statement isn't nothing that we haven't read about in AIS or you might have seen. So it's kind of been this thing where um, I guess the framing of the language kind of attacks. Some people would feel attacked or kind of critically thinking about, what does that mean? What does that term mean? But I like it because it allows people to do their research on what that means. Occupiers, things like of that nature. But within its historical context, I think it really puts the what it is now, because we haven't forgotten about everything that has happened, and how this place is settled. So um, yeah, the different terminologies are also important, and a lot of thought went into this. That's where you see the different ways of different statements coming from different areas, and you can kind of tell um, where what comes from where. So when we compared this to the Michael Crow statement, it's more of a um, anthropological, historical, um, terms like how would you say it? Civilizations, ancient, kind of something of the past. Um, but in our terms, we use the present because from us, we're still here, and we use things that are the speaking of some truth. So yeah, that's what I'll just add.
Yeah, the verbiage we use is extremely important because we don't want to make it seem as though it's like a possession of our land. The land is borrowed, it's lent to us. We don't take it with us when we die. It's just more of a meaning of our land, meaning that it's where our roots are, it's where we come from, it's where we stem from, and that's the really meaning of it.
Thank you for that. And I think comparing the two statements is a really wonderful exercise in seeing how different people approach the same history. And one thing I really love about the statement created by the committee is that it makes the effort to actually teach people what the original words are for things and make them think critically instead of just a polite acknowledgement. So that brings us to our next question. Where do you see land recognition going in ASU's future? How would you like to see this statement presented? And if you would like to see it presented in any specific context.
Um, this is a really big question. I think for me, the reason why I got involved with, well, we've kind of been involved with this is because the statement is one thing, but putting into action and doing things that are crucial to our thriving here at the university. So things that help us thrive as Indigenous students. So whether that's tuition, whether that's help with Indigenous students tuition, whether that's having them being on campus living for free, offering housing support um, for Indigenous students. If you recognize the people that are here and people that have been going through these things and have a long stated history, then this acknowledgement has to mean something more than that, um, than showing it at a conference or something. Um, so it's asking, but it's also not demanding, but like putting it out there that there's more to come to this. There has to be more for the future generations that are going to be here, that are going to be here in the next, so-called in the next couple of 100 years. Um, so there's a lot to ask for in this statement. This statement is very small and short. So putting it into perspective of a larger discussion of what can be tangible, what is realistic. Because I know students who, are acknowledged, but they're struggling financially. You know, like how can you acknowledge and say, "Oh, we honor you, we respect you," but they're struggling and they need help. So there's that type of um, for me. That's where I want to say. Um, that's where I want to say that this needs to be, some action done behind it. And I know action looks in different ways, but that's how I kind of see for the future as, having my siblings and everyone being able to feel um, happy that they're coming to ASU and getting their degree and going further. Um, not having to sit with the crux of debt and all these other things too. So I think there's just a lot to put in perspective of that. So that's where I kind of see the future of it going.
Sorry about that. Excuse me. I definitely agree with Napoleon. I have some nieces and nephews that were enrolled in the preparatory. They're in like junior high, elementary, and they were really excited, knowing that I go to ASU and they're going to be going there too. So just knowing that these changes that we're making is only going to be more beneficial for them in the future makes it all worth it, and hopefully it leads to even more, I guess, identity for people, for the Autumn people, for any minorities, to realize what type of land and what the history is for it.
Thank you for your answers. And I think that really puts it into perspective that a land recognition statement is only a statement unless larger actions are made. And if it's only a statement, that could be something that's in a greeting card. It's not something that is changing someone's life. And I know Napoleon is involved with AISSS, American Indian Student Support Services, and I'm sure he's seen firsthand that for some students, the support they're getting isn't quite enough, and this needs to change in the future. So I received an email before this presentation from the Maricopa Community Colleges who said some of the people working on land acknowledgements were interested in the recording. So I wanted to ask for those viewing this video in the future, what advice do you have for those looking to create a land recognition statement?
Yeah, so I would say gather your student body, gathering your Indigenous student body, have a meeting, as many people as you can get as involved as possible. Invite those who are from that area, from the community, that are students, and also letting them know like they definitely want to incorporate them in this conversation and helping them and enriching their voices as well, helping promote those crucial voices that are there. And I say that because us Autumn, we don't make up a large population of the group at ASU. It's heavily, other tribal communities are much larger, but the folks that we do have that are committed, we make sure that we uplift their voices as much as they can. That's not saying like one is like over the other. It's like we have to also pay respects to, as though we were also in anyone else's territory, whether if I was in Apache or, even in Choctaw or, where you're from, Tyler, I would want to get as many, folks that are there as possible. So I would say, gather your student body, gather those who are from the community, gather as much people as you can, and also once that happens, gather your allies. Folks that are not at the table that you want to bring at the table. Black, Indigenous folks. The other coalitions, LGBTQS. A lot of those communities that can help advocate with you that these statements are tangible and that you can create change through that way. Because the more allies you have, the better you have chance with getting these land statements hashed out and collectively putting your thoughts together and putting something that's beneficial for others. And I say that because we've had meetings with the deans and folks that are supposed to be advocating for us, and we've had discussions where we don't see eye to eye. However, we've had backing of other students and other departments willing to say, "Hey, this is great. You know, we should be supporting the students." So if it's coming from the students, it's a lot more effective, um, despite all the challenges. And that's the last thing I would say is like, have a strategy, um, because these things have, like I said, have to go through approval. They have to go through all these things. We read ours in places that we feel comfortable, even though it's not, recognized by the ASU, or even though it's not 100% like certified ASU. But we read it, and others read it, and other organizations read it because it's a it's a statement, right? So we're going from the people, and so I think those are just kind of the recommendations I would give, and just be ready to have like your resources and uh, your citations, right? Because we're an institution, so we have to always have our research to back it up. Where you're getting the works from, where you're getting your over your like, what was your critical thinking of putting this together? Because people will challenge you on that. It's like, well, where's the research on colonialism, or where's the research on, Autumn history? So we always have that in our back pockets because we're always challenging each other and asking questions. So I would say those are those really things that we lean on when we get asked, like, why did you use that? Or what do you mean by occupiers, or this and that, or decolonization, stuff like that. So we always have that up to back us. So yeah, those would just be my recommendations.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to touch on too. Do your research, get the facts. You definitely want to make those connections, create those relationships. And then, once you get a few baseline statements, like sentences, and really define what you want the message to be, and then just kind of build off of that. And, you'll have multiple drafts, have people review it, have edit it, and perfect it, really.
Yeah, it's definitely an ongoing process. And I've heard in the land recognition meetings before that it's a living document. It's something that can be changed to reflect ongoing research or changes in society now. And that's why it's important that it not only reflects the past, but also our present and future. So I wanted to open up to questions for the audience, and I see that Serena had some great comments that currently there's one multicultural center on the Tempe campus. I believe they're working on opening multicultural centers on the other campuses. The one downtown, I believe, is still getting some remodeling done, but they are having an event for Native American Heritage Month in the downtown center this Friday, a week from now, supported by ASU Changemaker. So it's great to see that organizations outside of our Native community are trying to be active and involved too. And I agree that the land recognition plaques are a little difficult to find on campus, and they're definitely small in comparison to a lot of other signage that ASU has put out. as far as food support for students, that's something that has been recognized by AISSS in the past, and a pitchfork pantry is something that's available, but there are issues with access even still. And yes, I would love for more people to be at our discussions for NOM. I think we had a couple competing events going on today, which is why I'm happy to record this for people in the future to reflect on. Serena, did you have any questions you'd like to ask on your microphone?
Yeah, there is one question that I wanted your guys' opinion on. Do you think what ASU is doing right now for Indigenous students and the Indigenous communities is performative?
Um,
I think,
I'll go ahead, Ms. Vaughn.
yes, so I think just actually taking the first step to do the changes is a good start. You know, it's probably never really going to be enough, but it's a step in the right direction is basically what I'm trying to say. So hopefully we will be able to build off of that, because right now, like, something is better than nothing, you know. So hopefully we'll be able to make even more positive changes in the future. But like I said, it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, back when I first started here, it I didn't really know what a recognition or a statement was. It kind of sounded cheesy in a way. Well, just the way that I read from uh, President Crow and the way that it was kind of framed. And so it did seem performative even when it was read. Uh, when I did hear it at places, because there were some places that took the effort to do research and read President Crow's statement, but it wasn't nothing but the bare minimum. And so it did feel it was a performative then, because like no one was really touching it at the time, because it was just like recognizing and stuff in a very historical past tense way. But I think now that we have an established group, we have a strong standing with a lot of our relatives that are here, our student body, Indigenous student body. I think we have a lot more strength in creating more awareness around it, and also, like Tyler was mentioning, changes to the statement, and also making it impactful um, and more action based. Because anything can be, it's always performative until we start asking for stuff, and then it gets more into another another aspect in which we want to go to is putting these words into actions. Because you can ask a few other students and they say, "Oh, it's heck of performative." If there's no action behind it, then what's the point? Um, and that's true. And we've been getting a lot of people reaching out to us now, not just LRC, but our Voices of Autumn Students group. We've been getting more and more people to actually reach out to us and talk about these things, because they're seeing the impact that we're doing. They're seeing the actions that we're taking. Yeah, that's a good question, and that's something that I hope a lot of times that I hope higher ups can ask themselves: is this performative? Like, I hope that when these deans read their statements and stuff and challenging themselves, like on our sentence says, recognize you're always on indigenous lands. So that's a critical thing. Like, what lands are you on? Is this performative? What am I doing to give back? So that's always a question that we'll go over. Folks who are listening to our statement think about, because it's really a self-reflection. Is this performative? Am I just doing this just to look good? And if you ask a lot of Native students, then you kind of get that. You kind of already know the answer, but yeah, thanks for that question. That's a good one.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. He brings to mind what current resources are available for Native American students. I feel like ASU has been offering more than they have in the past, and they're expanding student positions within AISSS, which I personally have benefited from greatly, the chance to work in the Native community while still in school. And I feel like it's a start. It might not be the same as some other colleges that offer heavy discounts on tuition and room and board for Native students, like you may have heard of in Colorado or Washington, but it's a start. And I think having these conversations, having these events during Native American Heritage Month shows the support for our community, and ultimately that's ongoing support and just being present in the community where we're visible is what's going to help us create real change in the long term. I do want to acknowledge one program ASU has that I've been impressed by personally. The Research on Violent Victimization Lab has an excellent team working on murdered and missing Indigenous people. It's part of ongoing research that is supported by a Senate bill to address the issue of murdered and missing Indigenous people. And it's something that they've been able to create a lot of partnerships with Indigenous organizations throughout ASU and the community. So I think there's definitely some examples where things might be a little more performative, like the plaques placed on campus, but there's also real research and projects that will have a huge impact on our community when they reach their full potential. Ms. Vaughn, Napoleon, did you have anything else you would like to add?
Nothing that comes to mind. As far as like, well, I guess just like if you're wanting to do more for Indigenous students, in any place that doesn't have the voices there, just kind of create that space there. There's a lot of Indigenous works around, and so having them perspectives on things. I only say that because there's like was stated in there, there's multicultural centers being placed on different campuses. So it's important to have also our voices there as well, that are being there. So just being inviting and being a good relative in that sense of you know, collaborations and stuff like that. I think once we have a lot more people being heard, then it really can build off of things, and that's how we got started. That's how the LRC got started. It's just we have one group, and then but also we also wanted to have a sub or not a subgroup, but I guess another group kind of working on this. And it was all through inviting people out and making sure they're heard. And you know, I think that's about it for me. In closing, just being able to invite Indigenous students and stuff to different events. And NAM is just a month, but it's always um, crucial to know that it's every day that we're dealing with these things. So yeah, that's all I had to say.
Education